Alright, been a long time, but much of the work is not worth videoing. I haven't been able to put the hours in either, so I have assembled as much as I can that's of interest, and hopefully that'll do. But things like, for instance, the inertia reel seat belt, which they found the inertia bit didn't work and the return spring was very weak, so I've thrown them out and decided to have new ones. But then when I fit them, it's only 3 bolts, so it's not really worth videoing, not for something like that. So it's just about finished. I say just about because I'm having problems finding a door seal. The present ones that I've bought, the standard size, unfortunately, because the door panels are slightly thicker than normal with the padding, their doors won't shut. So I've got to find a thinner seal, and that's going to take some time. I've got some samples on the way, maybe. Anyway, that's the end of this part of the car work, so look forward to the next stage. These are the first 2 side pieces. They're simpler ones, and I learnt quite a lot on the first ones, and they've come out quite well. Quite happy with those. These are the ones that go down by the legs. I wanted to do it in 2-tone, and I also wanted to have these ridges of foam. However, unfortunately, the sewing machine wouldn't feed through the foam and the vinyl at the same time, so I had to come up with a different method altogether. This is the way I'm doing it. I've drawn lines in, and they had to be accurate. They're exactly 30 millimeters apart. Top bit's okay with the foam on, so what I have to do is I have to stick strips of foam in between and then put the sewn piece on afterwards and glue it in between. So these are all the pieces, and they're held in place with double-sided tape. And these, you can see why it needed to be accurate. And it's stapled at the top. And the next job is to apply contact adhesive to the two sides and then carefully press them together to form the ridges, and then I'll be able to turn them over and finish the other side. All the padding's finished and it's stapled, and to hide the staples I've got this strip which was 40mm wide, and then adhesive on the back and then folded into the centre and then stitched. And it's the stitching that's the hard part, trying to keep it straight. However, it'll be held in place with the double-sided tape and then turned over and stuck down with contact adhesive. That's the two door panels done. That's all of them now. There are just a couple of little tiny ones left which go up the side of the pillars on the windscreen. Well, this is the capping on the passenger side that goes over the wheel arch. It's the one I had to make out of wood. Unfortunately, the wood decided to take on a bend. It warped and in the wrong direction. So this is my attempt at trying to straighten it out and create a bend the opposite way. What I've done is to drill a series of holes which I filled with water and then left the weight on. The water, I hope, would soften the wood a little bit. It's still almost straight, but the curve is now appears to be at this end. But I'll try it and see how it fits. And if it fits, then this will dry out to the shape that it's being held at. The seat cover's finally arrived. Maybe not a sensible colour to choose, but it goes well with the green. Not a hard job to fit. Follow the instructions, making sure that you mark centres each time so that the panels line up. One useful tip was to cut a piece of the plastic bag they came in and glue a strip across the top of the shoulders of the backrest. And then when you come to fit the back, it just slid on nice and easily over the plastic. Very helpful tip. Well, the next job's going to be the headrests. This is the original, the one that was on the car. Very nice actually, and I like it. Unfortunately, somebody had sprayed it black, and I quite like the autumn leaf colour underneath. In fact, if it had been like that all over, I might well have kept them. However, I've got to replace them with the cover. And here's the cover. Unfortunately, there's no chance of getting the cover to fit onto the old one. It's just not malleable enough. So I've got a new sponge which fits inside with great difficulty. Still not quite in the right place, but I'll no doubt get there in the end. And you have to remove all the sponge, foam, everything until you get back to the frame. And theoretically it goes in there like that and completes the job. Well, here's the foam, and that's where I've got to get it. Well, I've done one, and it's not easy. The job in hand at the moment is fitting the new console. It's held in place with the ring that goes around the gear lever with these 4 set screws. They're a bit specialist. They are chromium plated, they are countersunk, they've got a raised cap, and they're posi drives. 3 long and 1 slightly shorter. Unfortunately, the tunnel covering with the carpet and the soundproofing is very thick, and they're no longer long enough. And I can't find anything like it on the internet. Nothing at all that's anywhere comparable. So I'm making these extensions. It would have been better if I had hexagon, but I didn't. So I've only got ordinary rod. I had to buy a new die, tap, to cut the thread. Got hundreds of taps, but not a UNF. Anyway, that's a 1/4 inch UNF, and basically all I'm doing is I've countersunk the end. I'll screw this in 2 turns, and now I'll put in some flux and a few bits of solder, and I'll silver solder them together, and hopefully that'll do the job. That will then screw in, and these will be now extended. Well, that's the theory. It would have been nice to have been able to put a spanner on it to tighten them up, but I'll see how I get on with mole grips. The discoloration is because it was zinc plated and it's burnt the plating off. Still, they'll clean up. There they are. They all finished quite well, cleaned up okay. Odd assortment there of spring washers, but they'll do the job. And they should screw together and they'll extend them quite nicely. Right, I'll do my best to do a walk around and try not to wobble too much. The winder handle touched the vinyl, so I've 3D printed some extensions. Copper colour at the moment, but I'll do some more later on when I've got the right material.